All right. As I was studying this lesson this week, I said to myself, this lesson seems really familiar. I went back through my saved Sabbath school lessons on my computer, and I taught this same lesson in 2022. Wow, 4 years ago. But I already built the slide deck by then, so didn't help a whole lot. But you'll see a couple of slides. So I want to start with somebody would hit the one line above you. Go ahead and start that, Brian. This is an introduction to our lesson.
The letter of James, or at least that's his name in English. If you look in the Greek, you will see that his name is Yaakobos, which translates his Hebrew name Yaakov. And that's why most ancient and modern translations render his name as Jacob, and that's what we're going to call him in this video. Now, there are many Jacobs in the New Testament. 2 of them belong to Jesus' inner circle of the 12 disciples, but this letter comes from the Jacob who was the half-brother of Jesus himself. Now, we learned this Jacob story from the book of Acts and from Paul's letters. After Peter moved on from Jerusalem to go start new churches, Jesus' half-brother Jacob rose to prominence as a leader in the mother church in Jerusalem, who was made up mostly of Messianic or Christian Jews. This was the first Christian community ever, and we know that it fell on hard times during the 20 years that Jacob was its leader. There was a famine that led to great poverty in the region, and these Messianic Jews were being persecuted by Jewish leaders in Jerusalem. But through it all, Jacob was known as a pillar of the Jerusalem church. He was also known as a peacemaker who led with wisdom and courage until he was tragically murdered. And in this book, we have the legacy of Jacob's teaching and wisdom condensed into a short and very powerful work. The book begins like a letter. He greets all the Messianic Jews who were living outside the land of Israel. But this does not read like one of Paul's letters where he addresses specific problems in one local church. Rather, this book is a summary of Jacob's sage wisdom for any and every community of Jesus' followers. And Jacob's goal isn't to teach new theological information. Rather, he wants to get in your business and challenge how you live. Jacob's wisdom has been heavily influenced by 2 sources. The first is Jesus' teaching about life in the kingdom of God, especially the Sermon on the Mount, which he's constantly echoing and quoting in the book. The second key influence is the biblical wisdom book of Proverbs, especially the poems in Proverbs 1 through 9. Jacob literally grew up with Jesus and with the book of Proverbs. And so now his own teaching sounds like them. It's stamped by their language and imagery. The book consists of short, challenging wisdom speeches that are full of metaphors and easy to memorize one-liners. And in essence, Jacob is calling the Messianic community to become truly wise by living according to Jesus' summary of the Torah, to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. The body of the book is in chapters 2 through 5, which consists of 12 short teachings that call God's people to wholehearted devotion to the way of Jesus. And altogether, they don't develop one main idea in a linear way. Each teaching kind of stands alone and concludes with a catchy one-liner. But all of these teachings are connected through key repeated words and themes that's really cool. At the opening of the book's body, there are 2 teachings. First, about favoritism and love. Jacob exposes how we tend to show favor to people who can benefit us, and we neglect people who can't, usually because they're needy. Jacob says this is the opposite of love, as Jesus defined it. He goes on to show what genuine faith does and does not look like. So if someone says that they have faith in God, but neglects people who are needy or poor, this person's faith is dead, he says. Their actions betray what they say they believe, and genuine faith always results in obedience to Jesus' teachings. Now, scattered throughout the body of the book, we find 3 different places where Jacob develops Jesus' own teaching about our words. So, with the same mouth, we unleash pain upon people and then go offer praise to God. So messed up. And also, we judge people and then go talk badly about them behind their backs. We also all tend to distort the truth to our own advantage. How we talk about people opens up a window into our hearts and our core values. Our words tell the real truth about our character. Jacob also believes that God's kingdom community, as Jesus taught about it, is the kind of place where the divisions created by wealth and social status are dismantled. So he warns first about the arrogance that wealth can create in people who believe it will be around forever. He says, no, your wealth will one day rot just like you. In contrast, God's people are to live with patience and hope for Jesus' return to set all things right. And this should inspire a life of faith-filled prayer. Now, this part of the book, all of these teachings are so powerful, and there's way more than we have time for in this video. But seriously, read all of them and slowly.
Well, thank you for attending. That's our lesson today. 4 minutes and we're done. Is that helpful? You cast the overview. Right.
The letter of James, or at least
in there, he mentions that James has been called by many commentators the Proverbs of the New Testament. James doesn't offer any new doctrines in his book. No Christological commentators said preaching. This is about practical Christian living, and really, really practical for us today. These next 3 slides I took from my lesson from 4 years ago. He doesn't address a specific church or person. The video made that point clear. The date is believed to be somewhere in the date range there. James was martyred in AD, or as the video said, murdered. I read one historian, Eusebius, said he was thrown from the pinnacle of the temple and he didn't die in the fall, so he clubbed him to death on the ground. Don't know if that's true or not, but he died a brutal death. James was criticized by Martin Luther. In fact, Martin Luther said this doesn't belong in the canon of the Bible. Why would that be? It's controversial. Martin Luther preached what? We are saved by grace through faith. James says, yeah, but what about works? We'll talk about that. Oops. James apparently didn't believe his brother was Jesus. And in John 7, it says, even his own brothers did not believe in him until Jesus appeared to his brother after the resurrection, referenced in Corinthians. He was a leader of the Christian church in Jerusalem, as the video pointed out. And he was presided over the first general conference session in Revelation, in Acts 15, rather, when the issue was what? Circumcision, meat offered to idols. He was an eyewitness to the ministry of Christ at the beginning of the Christian church, as recorded in the Gospels and Acts. And this may well have been the first book ever committed to writing in the New Testament. Hence, we're studying right now in the middle of our study of Acts at the point at which historically it probably occurred. These are the big ideas of James. Genuine faith is a visible faith. Jesus connects belief with behavior, doctrine with discipline, and faith with daily life. The key lens through which we should look at the book of James is, how does authentic faith shape the way we endure, speak, serve, plan, pray, and relate to others? And this is kind of a roadmap. The 5 books talk about faith tested, faith demonstrated, faith expressed, faith submitted, and faith persevering. And we'll touch on each of those if time allows. I found this quote, and I really like this. Unlike Paul's emphasis on how a sinner is justified before God, James emphasizes what genuine faith, saving faith, looks like after conversion. So we're saved through faith, by grace through faith. But after that, genuine faith looks like serving a person. It's not merely intellectual. It's not head knowledge. It changes attitude, speech, relationships, priorities, and behavior. James repeatedly asks this one overarching question: does your life demonstrate the faith that you profess? Does your life demonstrate the faith that you profess? Let's look at James 1. Trials produce maturity. James begins with one of Scripture's most surprising comments. Here it is. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. When troubles come your way, consider it an opportunity. I'm so glad I'm having troubles today. Wouldn't want it any other way. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. That's what James said in these 3 verses. Trials are not pleasant, but believers can view them with purpose. How can our perspective on trials change the way we endure faith? In other words, why is God letting this happen to me versus what is God trying to teach me? Wisdom is not merely knowledge, as I mentioned a minute ago. James defines wisdom as God's perspective applied to life's problems. God invites us to ask. He gives generously. He does not shame us for asking, and he expects wholehearted trust. The next group of verses, James carefully distinguishes between trials and temptations. In fact, here's what these verses say. God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. Afterward, they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. And remember, when you're being tempted, do not say, God is tempting me. God is never tempted to do wrong, and he never tempts anyone else. This is James speaking. Temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. These desires give birth to sinful actions, and when sin is allowed to grow, it gives rise to death. We're going to have time for discussion. I'm just going to hit some high points here. The next group of verses, this is perhaps the best known section in James. Christians should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. In my executive leadership coaching practice, when I'm talking to leaders about this, I really like a professor from Harvard who calls this emotional agility. When someone says something and it triggers a strong emotion in you, can you pause long enough between that stimulus before you respond so that you can choose your words carefully? He uses the quote from, what's his name? The prisoner of war, a Jewish guy from Auschwitz, psychiatrist. Oh, trying to the tip of my tongue, but I can't think of it. Huh?
Frankel?
Yeah.
Frankel?
Yeah, Frankl. Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose. And in our choice is our, I got the signal to speak up, I lost me. And in our choice is our growth and our, I forget what the last word is. Leaders, but we as Christians need to practice emotional agility. Pause between. If somebody says something that triggers you, pause and say, if I respond that way, is that going to be helpful to this person? Or could I pump the brakes for a second here and choose a different way to respond? Slow to speak and slow to become angry. Hearing scripture without obeying it produces self-deception. James compares it to looking in a mirror and immediately forgetting what we look like. Says that right. True religion includes controlling the tongue, caring for widows and orphans, and remaining unstained by the world. Faith becomes visible in everyday life. All right, that's a quick summary of James 2. We're going to do we're going to do James 2, and then I've got some discussion questions. Major themes in James 2. James condemns discrimination based on wealth, appearance, or social standing. Showing favoritism dishonors the poor, contradicts God's character, and violates the royal law, which is love your neighbors, love your Lord your God with all your heart, and love your neighbors yourself. Mercy is the distinguishing mark of those who have received God's mercy. Then in this passage, James says, what good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say that you have faith, but don't show it by your actions? Can that kind of faith save anyone? Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing and you say, goodbye, have a good day, stay warm and eat well, but then you don't give that person any food or clothing. What good does that do? You saw that in the little cartoon drawing at the beginning, if you remember. So what are our key takeaways? Whoops, one more slide. So what's the difference? Some people have said Paul and James are in conflict when they talk about faith and works. So Paul often addresses how sinners are made right with God, not by earning salvation through works, but saved by grace through faith. James addresses the nature of genuine faith. Living faith produces good works, good actions, good behavior. Paul opposes work as the basis of salvation. James opposes a barren profession of faith without without being life-changing. We are not saved by good works, but saving faith. We are not saved by good works, but saving faith does not remain alone. And I think this, whoops. And I've used this quote more than once in this class. I'm going to use it again this morning because it fits right here. It's from Morris Venden, his very first book. It's not who you know. It's not what you do, rather. It was the title of the book. And he said in that book, it's not what you do, it's who you know. That's what saves you. You know Jesus. And who you know changes what you do. That puts the faith and the works in the right order for me. James contains many commands emphasizing action. He says that trials refine our faith, wisdom is practical obedience, and works reveals genuine faith. So some quick applications, and then we got some discussions. Trials are opportunities for spiritual growth, not evidence that God has abandoned us. God generously provides wisdom to those who seek him in faith. Spiritual maturity is measured by perseverance, not comfort. When we're in a comfortable space and there's no trials in our life, does that mean we're living in the optimum place of faith? Not necessarily. Spiritual maturity is measured by perseverance. Personal responsibility matters. We can't blame God for our sinful choices. We have freedom of choice. God's goodness is constant, even when circumstances are painful. Biblical knowledge alone is insufficient. Transformation comes through obedience. The church should reflect God's impartial love, welcoming all, regardless of status, race, education, or wealth. Good works do not earn salvation, but they demonstrate genuine faith. So here's the conclusion. Now, some discussion questions. Is favoritism an issue in the church today, as defined by James? You can do any of these questions. Whichever one stimulates, please. Sorry?
Answer is yes.
Remember to speak up.
When I was part of the pastoral staff here, it was amazing what the ladies in the office, the calls they would get. If there was some event in the church, certain individuals, based upon their employment, wanted to be noticed during that event. It almost became a sad joke in the office.
I just realized I left my hair gaze at home already. I wonder if I'm having trouble. Any of these questions? What does loving your neighbor as yourself look like in today's church community?
Loran, what's the difference between favoritism and friendship?
The difference between favoritism and friendship?
Right. In other words, we have certain people we favor because you're a better golfer than they are. Or you favor them because they like the same music you like, you go to a concert. So what's the difference between favoritism? I mean, and I think the answer is in the exclusion of those that maybe are not your friends, but we should treat them as such. That's kind of what I was going.
Okay, I get it. At least I think I do. And it's true. We're drawn to people who have similar likes. Some of my best friends now are the guys I play golf with on Sundays and Tuesdays regularly, or people who see the world politically like I do, or people who enjoy the same kind of music or entertainment that I do. So
I was just thinking about that.
So we're drawn to people like that.
Friendship and favoritism.
Right.
In friendship, I know you. So I might choose you for something because I know you, as opposed to someone who I don't know. And it could look like favoritism. I really have to resist that. But there is a very human, natural, legitimate tendency to want the best and to look for people that I know to do the job.
Right, exactly. What else? Any of these questions? Anyone want to speak to the third one, a trial that strengthened your faith? Loretta.
We had the good fortune for many, many years where we live to have wonderful, wonderful neighbors. And sadly, they sold their house. And this new couple moved in and they built a fence around their house. They put a no trespassing sign by their front. They now are putting in a gate.
And they planted bushes along the inside of the fence, so they have a fence and bushes that are gonna be as high as the ceiling fence.
It's really hard to be friendly with them because the other neighbors, we did things socially with them. We watched their kids grow up. We've gone to weddings, showers. I mean, we're very close friends with them. And now we have these new neighbors and I'm just determined to be friendly. So the minute they walk outside, I'm waving, hi, because I want them, even though they might not want it. I want to give them the same friendliness that I do to the other couple, but it's hard.
Befriending someone is a two-way.
Sure, sure. And I can accept that, but it's just the statement that they made is leave us alone. Yeah, they do call you occasionally. The wife does call you occasionally to ask questions, but it really hit me how easy it is for me to say, ugh, I don't want to be bothered with them. And I thought, no, that's not kindness and that's not friendly.
Practical example. Yeah, she reached out to me. What do I do with this turtle that's digging a hole in my backyard? I said, you relocate it. You don't kill it. Terry.
The question of, how does trials strengthen our faith? Personally, I know that great disappointment in a situation leads you into a ministry in a whole different way that you wouldn't have done. And even this morning, I was turning on Tim Tebow. Well, he took the Gators to the Nationals and all that.
Yeah.
He went to the NFL and found that they dismissed him because he didn't have a passing record. That was devastating. But now, maybe all of you know, the Tim Tebow Foundation, the Lord directed him, because his parents were missionaries in the Philippines, by the way, directed him to go in multiple countries, almost 100 countries now, saving marketed children, especially girls, saving them from being marketed, and also celebrating people who had physical and mental defects. If you ever go watch Tim Tebow Foundation, and he basically says, I finally found what I'm here for, and I love it. It's disappointing to be fired, a game, but there's a whole more important world.
That's a good example.
Yeah.
Redirected his energies and
Not
Focus in
my
life.
choice,
like where they're
be fired.
Piggybacking on what this sister just said about the neighbors, the fence and the no trespassing sign, you never know where they came from and what bad experience they would have had with the previous neighbor, okay? But because we love Christ, we must love people right where they are and pray for them. And in no time, they're going to be the best neighbors.
I don't think it's about us
It's not us.
because they got neighbors on three sides, but
They probably had a bad experience,
good point.
bad neighbors, you never know.
Right,
And we continue to love on them.
right.
You had your hand up. I raise your hand because she never talks.
Yeah.
Personally, excuse me, personally, I know that trials have gotten me on my knees and I developed a deeper relationship with Christ. And when I look back on that trial, I look at it in a totally different way. It was an opportunity to meet God at a different level.
And that's what James is talking about. Your example is, or your sharing there is exactly right. In retrospect, it's always clearer, I think, in retrospect than in the moment, perhaps.
I asked what we're doing with the recorder.
Yeah, I forgot to mention it at the beginning. I was supposed to mention at the beginning that they're doing a video for the Sabbath on August 27 when we talk about the 100-year anniversary of this church. And so they're doing some recordings in some of the Sabbath school classes this morning. I was supposed to mention that at the outset. So when they came in, you would be questioning what's going on. Yes. Is it all right? Is it okay if you're in the movies?
Saying that as long as that's moving.
Wait,
Ask her not,
That's not.
say that again?
I want to ask her not.
Exactly.
There's no audio. There's no audio in this. I don't want it. I don't want it.
I think I'd feel more comfortable if there were a fence.
With bushes. Go ahead, Carlene.
2 years ago, our daughter shared with us that she's gay. I begged God to let me die. And it brought me to my knees in a way I can never, ever explain. And my walk with Jesus, I have to thank her for my walk with Jesus.
Wow.
Because it has changed my walk.
What a testimony. Yeah, over here we had a hand, I think, right there.
My family, a long time ago when me and my wife just started, I mean, I think it was like 1998. And it's so hard. I mean, first we just we live in a studio and our heater is just the stove. And then we prayed together. I said, we're gonna get through this. I said, you're a nurse, so because my family is having a hard time, so I work with my family, and they ended up not paying me because the business that they were in pressed down. So I started to pray. God said, hey, what are you doing? I said, and you told me you're gonna help me. I believe in you, you're gonna help me, then money starting to because I work in the construction, he showed me and said, okay, when I read about the tithe.
About the what?
The tithe.
Tithe.
Yeah. And he said, you test me first. If you believe in me, test me, give what you got. And said, okay. So I start giving what I got, what we have left. And I talked to my wife, said, hey, we need this for the light bills. So let's put it on the tithe. So let's see if he's true to his word.
Yes, me. That's what he says. Yeah.
And then after we gave it to him, I got from the next 2 days, I got a contract. Enough to pay the bills, plus we have a little bit extra. Then after that, it's just, okay, it works. So we start doing it, we're doing it. Then the kids come around. My Joas was first born. And we start, because my aunt, I borrow the car to my aunt. He let us borrow the car to my aunt, and it's just trial after trial. And then God is true to his word. He said, and then he will remind you later on when you come around to the other problem, much bigger problem. And he will tell you, he said, don't you remember the last time I helped you? He said, just be still and I will be there. I will help you out.
Thank you so much.
Always, always, always. Every time we cross to this problem, God always, now, sometimes my wife said, why are you so, even my aunt, my family is starting to notice that, hey, why you have this problem and you're still happy? I said, well, because last time I have this problem, something big comes in. So I said, hey, I welcome all the problem now. It's because every time I got this problem, God showed me a miracle. I said, I want to see God's miracle all the time.
Man, it says, test me and I'll show you. Blessings will be more than you can receive. Elmer, you had your hand up.
Well, the idea, do we have to experience a trial to learn? That number 3 that you had before on the slide, the previous slide. And I think the answer is no. We can learn from other people's observations. I mean, if otherwise, musicians would be making the same mistake over and over again. We can learn from other people's trials and mistakes and combinations of drugs that don't work. So I don't necessarily agree with 3 that you have to experience trial. You have to feel what it is for someone to experience that trial to learn from it, but you don't have to experience it yourself.
Some of us are pretty stubborn and we really. Like you, Albert.
I mean, like, husband.
Yeah, so that's who she's talking.
That's not what I'm talking about myself. I mean,
What about this? What about this next slide here? Which one of those personally? I'll speak for myself. It's coming up in James 3 here, but controlling speech.
Yeah.
I have this very bad impulse to say the first thing that comes to my mind, blurt it out and say, "Ooh," man, it gets me in trouble more and more. Anything else there? Please, Terry, and then Si.
Elmer has a point, but there's an asterisk. You never, when you experience it yourself, your witness is so much more powerful.
Yeah, that's very true.
You can say to a friend, "Oh, I understand what you're going through because I've seen this happen before." Or say, "Listen, look, this is what I've been through, and here I am," just like our gentleman here. That was a powerful witness he used.
Isn't it though?
Yeah. So you don't have to face everything bad, but when you do face a bad thing, it's an opportunity for you to face it.
Right. Si.
So I like your question. What's the most relevant in our spiritual lives? And for me, it is seeking wisdom. Because we always have to make decisions, and life is not black and white. It's always somewhere in the middle of the road, and we use judgment. And seeking wisdom and asking for guidance is what has been extremely helpful to me personally in trying to sort some of the difficult decisions that one has to make, that I have had to make in my life.
Would the word discernment describe that?
I think discernment, asking for
Discernment help me to choose.
because it's very easy to go to one extreme or the other. I mean, in a sense, you alluded to Martin Luther, as we recognize him as one of the great theologians, went to the extreme in saying James shouldn't be in the canon. Lack of discernment inhibited his decision making.
Okay. Anyone else want to speak to any one of those before we move on? James teaches that authentic Christianity is not measured by what we claim we believe, but how our faith transforms the way we respond to trials, the way we treat people, the way we obey God's word, the way we serve others. Genuine faith is visible faith. All right. Taming the tongue. James continues his emphasis that genuine faith is demonstrated through transformed living. After showing in chapter 2 that authentic faith produces good works, he now focuses on perhaps the clearest evidence of spiritual maturity, the words that we speak. The words that we speak. This is an overview of the chapter. In the very opening verse, he says that teachers should be judged more strictly. In fact, I think I have the exact wording here. I guess I don't. Teachers should be, he says, teachers of the word, not kindergarten teachers necessarily. I mean, my mind went to elementary school. They're going to be judged more, maybe not. But when I looked at it again last night, he's saying those who teach the word, preachers, Bible Sunday school teachers, I guess. Those who interpret the Bible, lead out discussions about the Bible, preach about the Bible, go door to door selling Bible books, whatever, held to a little different standard.
Yeah, so let's be clear.
Is that fair?
Grade school teachers are going to be given 6 stars in heaven.
Yes.
There's one. But teachers of the Bible, he talks about quite at length, and it's a very sobering passage.
It is.
If you've ever had the pulpit in a Sabbath school class.
Yes. As you and I do regularly. Yeah. Any other thoughts about that? James does not discourage teaching, but he warns against seeking the position for prestige or influence. Teachers shape the faith of others and therefore face stricter judgment from God.
Just a thought there. It's how can we say this? Having done studies in my doctorate degree in Boston at non-Adventist seminaries, 4 to be exact, and also be associated with leaders who are not Adventists but highly educated, and also to be the pastor at a college church where some of the faculty think they know more than the preacher does. It's very tempting when you get years of training behind you to think that you're the final word and above anybody else. What I discovered, especially on a college campus, because you get closer, is those who had the greatest degrees sometimes were the most out of balance personally in their ability to be humble and to treat the lowest students, the most difficult student, with kindness.
Right.
So there's the temptation of learning was easily simply kind of works in your mind that maybe you're above other people and therefore you can start acting differently.
Those of us in the room that have gone to college, either graduated or had gone to college, probably a professor might have popped into your into your head as Terry was describing that, somebody who had a lot of knowledge but was a lousy teacher. Couldn't convey it. The power of the tongue. Everyone struggles with this. No believer has mastered perfect speech. James includes himself. He says, we all stumble, emphasizing that controlling the tongue is a lifelong spiritual battle. It is for me. The tongue can cause devastating destruction. Words permanently damage families, churches, reputations, friendships, etc. I have a colleague and friend that I know who was told as a young boy, you'll never amount to anything. And that man went through his entire life proving to the world that that was not true. I'm getting the speak up signal from the back row. Went through life trying to disprove that. I am worthy. I am good enough. What a thing to say to a child. You'll never amount to anything. Let's see. James uses metaphors to describe this. It's like putting a bit in the mouth of a horse, so a big, strong beast, but you can control it by jerking on the bit. That's probably what works the best for me. Or a rudder that steers a ship. Take a big, fairly good-sized ship, and you could change its course by the rudder. Or a spark that ignites a forest fire. Although the tongue is small, it possesses enormous power to direct lives, destroy relationships, and reveal the true character of the heart. And then also James says, he's used these illustrations. Fresh and salt water cannot come from the same spring. A tree cannot bear olives. A grapevine cannot bear figs. Our speech reveals what's really in our hearts and in our heads. What's that Bible text? As the mouth speaketh, so is he, or something like that. As the mouth speaketh, so is he. All right, let's focus on wisdom here for a minute. 2 kinds of wisdom. True wisdom. James asked this question, who is wise and understanding among you? And his answer is, show it by the way you live. Wisdom is practical before it's intellectual. And then these are the characteristics of heavenly wisdom. James names all of those. The applications: guard your speech, seeks wisdom, be a peacemaker, and when you're in a teaching role, particularly when you're teaching God's word, teach with humility. And these are some of the things that a mature Christian demonstrates. James 4. Just trying to hit the peak here. Let's see. Same page. Yeah. James begins by asking in chapter 4, why conflicts arise among believers. The problem is not external circumstances, but selfish desires that battle within us. Key truths. Most conflicts begin with selfish ambition. Uncontrolled desire produces envy, quarrels, and broken relationships. Many prayers go unanswered because they're motivated by selfishness rather than asking for God's glory. The greatest battles are spiritual before they become relational. And James describes the relationship this way: you are adulterers, he says to his readers. You are adulterers. In what sense is that true? You are adulterers. Let's see if I got the next slide. You have divided loyalties. Divided loyalties. Friendship with worldly values is hostility toward God. There may be a question coming up. I'll do it right now. Is it possible? He says in here that don't be, I'm paraphrasing, don't be too friendly with the world. But my question is, how can you reach people in the world if you don't reach out and make friends? What's the difference? You can embrace worldly values. You can have friendship with the world, or you can live in the world, which many of us do. And we work in professions, careers, and we have different settings in our life. But I think you have to be friendly with people outside the church, maybe non-Christians, in order to demonstrate God's love through them, through the way that your faith manifests itself in your life. How do I act? How do I speak? How do I behave? How do I treat others?
Observation is, and this is not a negative, is some professions that generate great income and therefore allow a lifestyle that's better than others, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's a two-edged thing. It can be a sense of egoism, or I'm this because I have that. But I've also experienced people in that category who use what they have as one of the greatest opportunities to reach out to people, to come, hey, my house is your house. What we do, I want to share with you my blessings. And a lot of people who are lower income, they will hesitate to get that person's mansion. And the owner say, no, this is not mine. This is God's stuff. Hey, I want you to enjoy it. That's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
James, he talks about that just coming up here, that fact. But thanks for bringing that up. Sorry.
Loran, I think the challenge with that second sentence is we mean different things by friendship.
Yes.
In other words, if friendship means that I have to smoke a cigarette because you smoke a cigarette, that's one thing. If friendship means I could accept you as a human being and say, Loran, I don't think smoking is something that is good for us, but we could agree to disagree. That's another thing. I think the wrong kind of behavior is what opposes God, but just accepting another human being for who he or she is worth is not opposing God.
Yeah, true. The cigarette thing reminds me, sometimes when you go out and play golf, there's only two of you and you get assigned to play with two other guys. Sometimes they'll say, do you mind if I smoke?
Lots of times.
Lots of times. And I am bold enough to say, I really do. But sometimes they just pull out a pack and light up. Anyway, and at some point, I almost invariably say to that smoking golfer, I'm a physician and I feel morally and ethically obligated to tell you those things are going to kill you. And invariably they say, yeah, doc, I know. But smoking. So, Elmer.
So friendship with the world, it depends who influences whom. If you become influenced by mores and standards of the world and change what you know, then that's not good. But if you, because of the way you were brought up and what you studied, can influence others, that's good. So I think friendship, it depends on who is
Influencing who. Good point. Absolutely right. All right. What's the time like here?
You know, Loran.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Please. Don't mind at all.
The video's not running, right? So You know, a lot of this has to do with, if you read down through James, how you regard other people. And something's coming back into my brain that I like to share. 20 years ago, Advent Health needed a loan, and SunTrust was our banker. Our numbers deserved the loan, but I wouldn't get the loan until I got on an airplane and went to Atlanta and played golf with the president of the bank. I didn't ask to do that. That's what the president asked. So I got picked up at the airport. We went to the clubhouse. We had lunch together. He's very, very communicative, but I could tell he was watching me. And he was watching me, how I ordered. He watched how I treated the people that took care of me. He asked me a lot about my golf game. On a bad day, what do I shoot? On a good day, what do I shoot? Then we got out to the golf course and he goes, well, since on a good day you shoot this, on a bad day you shoot this, I'm going to give you this as a handicap and we're going to play a game. And all four of us played the game. Now, fortunate for me, I shot within the two numbers I gave him. And we had a really good day that day. But it dawned on me about halfway through the transaction. I didn't get called up there to actually have a good afternoon. I got called up there to find out what kind of person I was.
Clearly.
He did not want to give. And so when we were done golfing and we were sitting outside and he was drinking bourbon and smoking a cigar, and I'm sitting there talking to him and he looked at me and he goes, so you probably know I've watched you all afternoon. I said, obviously. and he goes, well, I want you to understand. He goes, you were nice to the waitress. And I asked her to bring you the wrong sandwich. And no.
Cool.
And she did.
Wow.
And she goes, and the way you handled that was really remarkable. He goes, and then you didn't lie about your golf game. Okay.
And you let him win.
No, actually, he didn't win. One of his colleagues did. But the truth was, all that day, what he was trying to smoke out was, what kind of human being was he about to give $500 million to? And it stuck with me for the rest of my executive career. And when you read James about how you're to treat other people, what this person was really trying to figure out was, regardless of the job I had, underneath that, was I a jerk or not?
Right.
And what James is basically saying is do you treat people the way you should, regardless of your status in life?
Mm-hmm.
And do you have a mindset that is one of abundance versus one of scarcity?
Mm-hmm.
And the more you have, the tendency is for you to think that's more scarce than abundant. It's amazing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And when you just read James, are you filled with enough spirit to actually treat those around you the way you'd want to be treated if you were in one of those roles? That makes sense?
Oh, perfectly. Yeah.
Logical.
Anyway, I'm so sorry.
No. I'm glad you.
Sabbath school class I've gone, but I've come back to that lesson in my life for the last 20 years.
Sure.
It was remarkable.
Yeah, some of the stories you've related over the years, conversations you've had on airplanes, people sitting next to you noticed something and indifferent in what you were reading, how you were behaving, and you struck up conversations that gave you an opportunity. That's what James is talking about here. Practical Christianity. Practical Christianity. How do I live a life of faith and be in the world and have friendships?
But when he said to me, I asked the waitress beforehand to make sure she brought you the wrong food.
Important sandwich.
See how you would treat her.
Yeah.
I was like, man, this guy really, and he goes, you need to understand, I do this with everybody at above a certain dollar threshold. He goes, and many people don't pass. I just don't give them the money.
Mm.
And so it was a real eye opener for me.
It's a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing it. Eugene.
How, apart from, our life experiences stuff, it's feel uncomfortable looking at
Other than the grace of God, how are we any different than maybe some of the people we're observing?
Say that last again.
How much different are we than the people that potentially we're observing? We have our own struggles and challenges, but we all have them. And we all need something beyond ourselves. And so I think we're no different as human beings, and we all need. And that should be the beginning or the starting point in how we interact with others. Instead of, I'm going to influence you for the better or whatever and stuff. It's more of, I'm in the same situation you are. And therefore, it has a different starting point as far as our interaction with others. I'm no better.
Right.
Hello.
Hang on a second, right here.
Just to back up what he's saying, I don't think James could have written that without having experienced every bit of it himself.
That's probably right.
Yeah.
Because hello, somebody teaching grief share or something like that, if they haven't been through it, or they shouldn't be doing it anyway.
I think I got somebody on Zoom that wants to speak. No?
Yes, yes. You know, it's interesting how people treat you when they know who you are and actually are what you are instead of who you are. And so when I go outside, I don't tell who I am, and I will see how people treated me as a person instead of what title or what degree I have. That's a good point. Thank you for sharing, Terry.
All right. Margaret.
I think I've been more struck today by that last statement, knowing good and not doing it is sin, than anything else today, because it's proactively positive. It's not, Adventists sometimes are known for what we don't do, and Christians should be known by what we do. And putting our focus on that, I think, is very important.
So one of the commentators referred to it. This is the often overlooked. It's in James 4, verse 17. An often overlooked definition of sin. Knowing the right thing and failing to do it. Sins of omission are just as serious as sins of commission. Sins of omission just as important as sins of commission. I got Jack, then Arthur, then Cy.
I guess I sinned really big this week. And y'all can rip me up if you like and put mine here. On a construction site, hot 97 degrees out this week.
Yes, it was.
I'm working and I've discovered 2 homeless guys camping out in the shade over on the corner of the property. I didn't handle it very well at all. I'll be the first to admit it. Now, we can talk endlessly about all the good things that could have been said or done. But, that at that time, that didn't come naturally. And,
what is kind of striking you now? This one,
yes, that could have happened. Maybe I totally blew it.
humanity.
I wasn't the example. I wasn't the golden boy with all the right things.
Welcome to being a Christian like the rest of us in the world. Arthur.
You mentioned genuine faith and not genuine faith. So you either have it or you don't have it.
Right.
Faith is faith. The Bible says without faith, it's impossible to please God. So there is only one definition of faith. And I think what James is saying here is, he says, even demons believe and tremble. Right? You can believe and you can say you have as much faith as you want. It comes down to, are you willing to put skin in the game? I think that's what it comes down to. Are you willing to, you can understand, for example, how a bridge is constructed, and you can believe all those things, but am I willing to step on it? I think that is the issue. Am I willing to make myself vulnerable in the face of uncertainty?
That's a good word. Vulnerability.
I'll pass.
You'll pass. All right. So it's Christmas time. I skipped chapter 5 because we're out of time. That's okay. These are the major themes we talked about. There are 8 of them that I picked up in James. I'm not going to go through them again, but there they are. Here's a diagnostic for living for a living faith. A diagnostic for a living faith. I'm just going to be quiet and let you read those. Kind of humbling, isn't it? James is in your diagnostic. I think there's 2 more. James closes his letter, and we didn't get a chance to look at chapter 5, but in chapter 1, he called believers to endure trials with steadfast faith. At the end, he shows that steadfast, what it looks like in practice, and the stuff in gray I won't read. Genuine faith is not merely professed. It's lived every day through a life fully surrendered to Christ. And here's a closing challenge. One of the better known verses in the book of James. Be doers of the word, not hearers only. James asks us to examine not merely what we believe, but what our lives reveal. If someone observed my life for 1 week, what evidence of living faith would they see?
Just wondering, Max Lucado has a definition of faith that I have grown to love, and it says trusting that God will do what is right rather than expecting him to do what he wants.
Yeah, do that last sentence again.
Trusting that God will do what is right rather than expecting him to do what you want.
Oh, it's nicely put. I like that.
Lucado, my favorite.
Yeah, me too. I like that. This is a Charles Swindoll's commentary on James, and there's a little. I'll close with this paragraph. Domestic divorce between husbands and wives has become an epidemic in the church, but spiritual divorce, a breach between the truth we hear from God's word and the lifestyles we live in the world, has become a pandemic. We open the word and we say, my, what a great practical principle. Or we hear a sermon, a Sabbath school lesson, and we think, what a fantastic, inspiring message. Then we close our Bibles or walk out through the foyer and we divorce the word from our everyday lives. Thank you for being here. A great Sabbath. Stay cool in the heat.
Thank you.
What? How you doing? Kelly, how are you?